Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is Saturday, and it's supposed to be the last warm day of the season, I guess. So, got the side-by-side loaded up, and we are heading to the sand dunes. I know it's a little different than what you guys are used to on the channel. I know you guys are wanting super content, but I've got about an hour drive ahead of me to get to the sand dunes. Figured I'd take this time to at least do something for you. So, what I would do is a little update. A little update with a little bit of a history, or a little background story of my Supra and how it came to be what it is today. I know it's still far from good, but that's why I have the channel. So, like I said, Supra's still not running. We're trying to work on the ignition timing stuff. We're close. It's super close. Maybe another week or so we'll have it running. It's just kind of fiddling through everything and just making sure I've got everything I need for it to start. For those of you that don't know much about ECU, standalone stuff, you're basically having to tell the whole ECU, like how to run, when to fire, like you're telling it everything, right? It's a fresh ECU. It's got nothing on it unless you like load a base map or something. But for my car, it didn't have a base map. So I'm having to basically tell it everything I needed to do, when to fire, yeah, all that good stuff. So that's why it's taking a little bit of time. That's why the car's not running. And then with like work and everything on top of it, I know I'm coming up with excuses. You guys are like, we don't care. We just want to see the car running. Trust me, I want to see the car running as well. Like I said before, I had the car on Mega Square ECU, and some people got those to work really well. I had no success with that thing. It did not work right. There was no documentation. There was nothing there that I could reference to in case I couldn't get the thing to run. It was very complicating and very frustrating, and I just was like, you know what, bag it. And I heard ECU masters. I know there's other ECUs out there that are better. Like I get it. Like there's always something better. Like I said in the last video, there's always a better way to do things. There's always a better solution to something, right? Obviously, like the AEM, Infinity, like all that stuff is like, it's pretty top notch. But for my case, it was affordable. ECU was affordable, so I got that one. A little background with that. It's a little bumpy in my car. So anyways, I want to do a little video. Like I said, I was going to be driving for about an hour. Sand dunes are about an hour and 15 minutes from my house, and it's pretty awesome. It's in like the middle of nowhere. I'm going to do a video. You guys may or may not be interested in it. Side-by-side stuff, for whatever reason, like I've never been able to get a lot of views on it. It's never really something that people watch stuff. I don't know if it's like we can just go out and take our own side-by-side and do our own thing. Why would we watch you do it? I don't know, but I'm going to show you guys. Sand dunes are they're a little rare. Not a lot of people have them, so it's kind of cool to see, I guess. But so anyways, the Supra, a little background. It is a 1988. So it is a 7MGE 1988 base. Non-turbo. For those of you guys are like, oh, does that Supra have a turbo on it? It does now, but it didn't come from the factory with a turbo. Base model, it had the leather interior, it had the recliner seats, the adjustable lumbar stuff, all that good stuff. And it was definitely advanced for its time, which was kind of cool. My dad was the original owner, so he bought the car in '88. Brand new from Mark Miller Toyota here in Salt Lake, and drove it off the lot. And he told me the story when he bought the car. There was like 3 or 4 other people standing at the dealership waiting to test drive my Supra. And he's, looking at it. He's the first one in line. Comes off the car carrier, like literally they pull it off the car trailer. And my dad takes it for a test drive. Takes it out, drives it around for like 45 minutes, brings it back. The other 3 guys are waiting there. And he's like, well, I'll take it. Other dudes were like, dang it, so they were out. That was like the one Supra that they got in Salt Lake at the time, and obviously they got more. He buys the car, and that was my mom and dad's daily driver for years, long time. And I always remember like being dropped off at school in the car, and I was like, oh, your dad has a Supra? It's like, yeah. So I mean, we're talking like years ago. Is that a Supra? That was like a thing. Like people still do that, and they did that a long time ago. And like, yeah, my dad's got a Supra. Oh, is it fast? For me, guys, when I was like in high school, I was like, yeah, that thing's fast. Like, it's a fast car. It's not that fast. Like, bone stock, 7M, 3.0, it wasn't that fast. I was actually really kind of disappointed when I got the car, because I had in my mind this idea that this car was just so ridiculously fast, and oh, this thing's gonna beat Lamborghinis. Like, I just had this idea that it was the fastest car in the world, and it wasn't. I got the car just before I got married. My dad's like, you know what, I don't want this thing anymore. It's just sitting in the garage. There's something wrong with it. I don't know what. He's like, it's got a rough idle, and I don't know, you have to look into it. So I was like, yeah, I'll take the car. Like, I've always wanted the thing. Like, I can't just get rid of it. I got the car, started driving it. Emissions came up like I have right now the issue with. I take it in, the guy comes out, and he's like, dude, your car's not gonna pass. I was like, what? What's wrong with it? It's like pretty good shape. I don't know. He's like, the emissions are horrible. Like, it's the worst car like we've seen in a long time. It's like, oh, that's reassuring. We did the usual, brought the car back. We did a leak down compression test, and we found the gremlin. Turns out number 6 exhaust valves were completely roasted. They were so bad. And basically what was happening is they weren't sealing all the way, the valves weren't closing all the way, and it was allowing exhaust to just basically blow by the valves and right into the exhaust and causing poor emissions. But I pulled the head. That's when I found that. Obviously, you're gonna be able to see the valves until you pull the head. So I pulled the head. There's the only thing that was wrong with it. So I got that fixed, put it back to factory spec. At the time, I didn't have a bunch of money, so I was like, I'm just gonna get this thing running so I have a car to drive, and that's what I did. The local company here, for those of my Utah guys or Salt Lake area, Pro Machine, they're in Murray. They did the build on it, and they're awesome. Like, I'll take a motor there to them every time. A little bit of rewind. My dad actually did the metal head gasket before I got the car. Did have the classic head gasket issue. Like, I'm not going to say it didn't. Blew a head gasket, and he pulled the head off, I think, and at the time, it wasn't a common thing to do. It wasn't like to have the block milled, I guess, the block resurfaced. So he had to mill it himself. So what he did was he got a piece of granite slab, like a zeroing block for machinists, and he put like sandpaper on it and wrapped the block in the sandpaper and lapped the block himself. It worked until I had it remachined. Obviously, I needed to do that. Put the metal head gasket in, ARP head studs, and it was fine ever since until the valve issue. I don't know what caused the valve issue. My guess is it had maybe some carbon buildup, and then the heat or something like just caused hot spots with the carbon buildup and caused it to basically burn the valves. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird deal. I got the head back, put it back on the car, and it was great. Ran great. Went and got the emissions done, passed. It was perfect. Drove the car for a long time until another gremlin resurfaced. And that was the bottom end is now going out. The car sat for, I want to say, like 4 years or something before I got it. So it was in the garage, so it was garage kept, but he never drove it. He never drove the car. They ended up buying another car, and he's like, it just sat and it wasn't driven as much as it should, and that's what I think caused all the wear, which is weird. You'd think a car sitting would be bad, you know, or would be fine on the car. Actually, it was really bad on it. It starts popping a bunch of smoke, and I'm still not turbo at this point, just driving the car like normal. At that moment, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna keep this car. I might as well just build the motor, and I'm gonna do it right. Took the block out. I didn't pull the rotating assembly apart because I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't want to start pulling stuff apart. But this is where I started to establish my knowledge of this motor. Looking at the rotating assembly, figuring out how it all worked. I started to gather how this car was put together, because I simply took a chance. I took a chance on, you know, building my motor, looking at it. I wanted to dive into it. I wanted to understand how this car worked, and that's basically how it started. So I pulled the block out, took it in. Sure enough, the rings were bad, and the cylinders were scored. So obviously they pulled everything apart. Pulled the crank out. Crank had a little bit of scoring as well. They resurfaced the crank, and then basically they're like, what do you want done? I was like, well, I'm gonna have the car for a while. I want to make some power. Tell me what I should do. I'm learning this stuff. I don't know what would be the best solution. Obviously, if you do forged internals, forged pistons, forged rods, ARP hardware, you're going to be set. You'll be golden. So I was like, okay, let's just do that. So we went with Eagle H-beam rods. They ordered everything for me. I don't know. It's just, I think they all came from Type Motorsports. But they ordered the rods for me, and then I did Wiseco 84mm pistons, and then ARP hardware all the way through. They did just the short block build on it because, like I said, I didn't have that stuff in my garage. I didn't want to screw something up. I didn't want to ruin my motor. I just said, you know, I'll pay you guys, just do the lower assembly for me, the rotating assembly, and I'll do everything else. It looked great. It was awesome. Put it back in, and that's when I went turbo. I went through a couple different turbo manifolds. Because of the intake manifold that goes up over the engine, I was limited. You guys probably have the same issues. You guys are running into the same issues that I had, and that is the intake manifold comes over the top of the engine, and the butterfly valve, or the throttle body, is like right where the turbo would go. Obviously, this car is not made to be turbocharged until they came out with the GTE and still didn't fix that problem. I don't know why they were so adamant about putting the intake manifold over the engine. It's the stupidest idea ever. I don't know. Even the 2J, like the IS300 or the naturally aspirated 2J, intake manifold over the engine. I don't get that. Why? Like, stupid. It's probably flow. I know there's probably some sort of science behind it. I know, like, but it's dumb. Like, that's a dumb idea. Going through different turbo manifolds. You know, what can I do to make a bigger turbo fit? I was in the idea of junkyard turbos at the time. Like I said, I didn't have any money. I had a little bit of money, but nothing crazy where I could go buy like a nice Precision. I was actually for a while looking at the Precision 6266 for this car, and I just couldn't afford it. It was, at the time, it was like $700. Like, this was years ago. I was like, man, I can't afford that. I'll just have to buy a junkyard turbo. So I bought the first one, which was a Garrett, like some ridiculous turbo for a transit van or something. It was huge. It was so stupid. And I had the idea, like, okay, it's a T4. At the time, my manifold was a T4. It's like, it'll blow right up to the manifold. It had a V-band on the turbine housing, so I'm like, oh, it'll be easy to do a downpipe, that sort of stuff. I put this thing in, and it was ridiculous. So like, this ain't gonna work. And it covered the intake manifold. Like, there was no way I could like rotate or do anything to make it fit. I took one of those cheapo eBay like stainless manifolds that were like $100. At the time, they're now expensive, and I cut the collector. I cut that down so I could try to give me some more room. And it didn't work. It wasn't gonna fit. So I bagged that turbo. I bought another one, and it was a Borg Warner, and it was also a diesel turbo. So that came off of a 6.4 liter diesel, like Chevy, I think, and that was all right. That worked. It did what I needed to do. It was the right size. And it was a T3, so didn't work with the manifold I had. But the turbo was sweet. I went through it. I rebuilt it, and I ceramic coated the turbine housing. I polished the compressor housing. It was sweet. Turned out pretty good. Wouldn't fit on the turbo manifold that I had. I started looking around. What were my options? And the best idea I came up with was doing a log style manifold to fit and accommodate everything that I wanted to keep, like the AC and power steering and all that stuff. I had to make the manifold up and tight to where the turbo would fit, the intake manifold would fit, would give me room to put in a rubber coupler and still run AC and run power steering and all that stuff. For those of you that don't know, or you're getting into this car, all the AC lines run right where the turbo would sit. They go right through the firewall on the US ones. It worked. The log manifold, it fit, and it was perfect. So like I said, the log manifold, it was custom built. All the pieces were from Treadstone Performance. They were the Weld Ls. You can still get them, you still have them, on a stainless steel 7M GE GTE flange. So it was perfect. Worked out great. Welded them all on there. Had it TIG welded. I couldn't weld at the time, so I had the thing TIG welded, and it turned out great. It was awesome. That's what I have on there right now. I put the turbo on, ran great. Was in the process of getting it tuned. Everything was fitting great. Everything was running great. Some weird vacuum issues. Some weird little other gremlins were showing up, and we got it all sorted out, and it was running great. I was running it on like, I think at the time I was like 12 PSI, running quite a bit of boost for factory ECU. I had the 7MGE injectors, and those are like 240s or something, 260s, like they're tiny. I didn't know. Like, I was learning all this stuff, guys. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, best way to figure it out was just to do it, right? So I'm like, yeah, you may break stuff along the way, but how else are you gonna figure it out? So I got a wideband, put the wideband in. Sorry, dying. And I was running that 12 pounds of boost on 240cc injectors, and I found out very quickly that it wasn't enough injector. I was running super lean. I was like, oh crap, that ain't good. I sourced some 550cc injectors. I did what I thought was going to work, and that was the Lexus math with the 550cc injectors, and going good. Turns out, you can't do a Lexus math on a 7MGE, only on the GTE. Doesn't work on the GE. GE uses that stupid vane style MAF or mass airflow sensor, and it's wired completely different. So I was hosed again. But I put the 550cc injectors in, and it seemed to work. It ran okay. That's how I've been running it for the last couple of years, and it was fine. Under boost at about 10 pounds. I put the wastegate and everything on there. 10 pounds of boost. I think the highest it peaked on the wideband was like 12. Yeah, I got lean for like a little bit, but not bad. Like, not bad for what I was doing. And I ran that way for a long, long time. Like, the video with the blow-up valve inserts, that was that setup. So that was recently, and the car ran great. Never had any issues. Like, except for like the weird idling and like the lower RPM, it would kind of sputter. I was actually surprised on a factory ECU that it ran as well as it did. So for those of you guys that are trying to do the same thing, GE, you're like, well, I want to turbocharge it. It works. Obviously, I'd advise you to tune it, especially if you have a bunch of engine work done on it. You might as well just get it on a standalone and get it tuned. Like, that's the safest way to do it. But if you're on a low budget, like, run 8 pounds of boost and just have fun with it and find its little gremlins on your own and figure out what you can do to make it better. Like, that's the whole point. On the Borg Warner turbo on there, everything was running great. I was about to get it tuned, so I thought I was. You can't tune a GE ECU. But I thought, I just plug it in. Like, I had no idea. And then I realized I needed a standalone. That's when I went to the Mega Squirt, and that's like, problem just kept getting worse and worse from there. I was so eager just to drive the car. I drove it on the 550s with the standalone, or with the GE ECU, and I beat the crap out of it. Like, I was not gentle on that build or that setup at all. I was redlining it everywhere because it sounded freaking cool. I'd hit rev limiter and blah, 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 pop and bang, and I'm like, oh man, this car is so sick. Like, I'm on top of the world. I developed a little bit of a rod knock, and I was like, uh-oh, that ain't good. I know what that sound is. Like, I'm not an expert, but I know what that sound is. And luckily, it was on a startup. It was in the garage. I started it, and I heard like a tiny, tiny, faint little tick. Like, yeah, it doesn't sound right. So I listened, and the tick would kind of come and go. Something's not right. Something's off. So I revved it up a little bit, like just with the throttle body, and then I could hear the ticking, and I was like, wow. Like, I knew I had done something bad. I decided to shut it off, and I let it sit. At that point, I had a little bit more money. So I called up Pro Machine again, and I said, hey guys, it's me again. What can we do to make this thing like solid? Pro Machine said, you know what, keep everything you have in there. Your Wiseco pistons are great. Your Eagle HP rods are great. ARP studs, ARP, everything is great. Don't change anything. But we are going to put better bearings in, and we will check it again. We'll go through it again. We'll change out the ARP bolts. We'll put some different ones in, and we'll crank everything down. We will make sure this thing is good for like 1,000 horse. I said, excellent, you're on the same page as I am, let's do it. So I pulled the block out again, sent it over to Pro Machine again, and they built it. They went through it and they checked everything, and they advised me on a lot of stuff. They said, just be careful. This motor is capable of 800, 1,000 horse, but we advise that you don't do that. Like, it's a street car. Do you really want to push that much power? And I was like, well, not really. I mean, I'm not on a prep surface. I'm not going to drag this thing. I don't care that much, right? Like, at the time, I didn't care that much. I just wanted to drive it. I just wanted to have fun with my car. I was like, yes, 600 horse, that's where I want to be. It's like, great, done deal. So I got the motor back, did the assembly again, put a kinetic metal head gasket in it, put new ARP head studs in, went through, torqued everything down, checked everything, and we were on cloud 9. Put the motor back in and ran it on the ECU. I know you guys are like, you just said don't run on a factory ECU. Like, I know, like I figured that one out. I ran it on that factory ECU on the 550cc injectors. I regapped the plugs. I did everything that would accommodate that. Now, I don't drive the car enough to cause problems. Like, I don't. It's not a daily driver. I have other vehicles that I drive. To cause an actual heating issue in the motor, I wasn't like super worried about it. I heat cycled the engine. I ran brake-in oil, and I did everything that they told me to do to the T. I wanted to make sure I was crossed on my I's and dotting on my T's, and I wanted the motor to stay together, and it has. It's been great ever since, guys. Like, it runs really good, and it's fast. Like, it's, for what it is on the turbo setup, which I'll get to that in a second, it rips. Some people that are like, yeah, like, you know, I've got an Evo that could beat that. Yeah, I know. Like, but I'm saying for what it is, it rips. It's a fast car. So I got it back together. I drove the crap out of it. Drove it to St. George. Drove it to Las Vegas on the factory ECU, 550cc injectors. Like, and I know I just said I didn't drive it that much. Like, that's a lot of driving. But it was fine. I mean, I wasn't like hammering on it going between Vegas and Utah, like in Salt Lake. Like, I wasn't beating on it. I just was highway miles, just cruising. And it stayed together. It's been great. Like, so, and then I was going to tell you, before I did the build for the third time, or the go through the third time, this most recent time, I pulled the metal head gasket off that I had before that, which was also kinetic, and it was great shape. You're not supposed to reuse metal head gaskets, and I didn't. Don't freak out. I didn't reuse the head gasket, but I could have reused this head gasket. It was that good. Like, it was super clean. The wear on it was perfect. Like, compression, everything was good. I didn't have any issues as far as its sealing, and you know, I wasn't gonna have any issues, so we're good. Been driving it for years, and at that time, I took the board warner off when I did this build, this last go around, and I threw a whole set HX35 on there. The HX35 was great. Again, I ran into some issues with it, kind of not fitting in between the intake manifold and the engine. It just sat a little too high. The board warner was smaller, so it fit perfect. Intercooler piping had to fit a little bit different, and yeah, so I got it to work, and I ran it that way on the HX for a long time. Then my buddy hit me up and he said, hey, I'm cleaning out my garage. I've got a bunch of car parts. Do you want this other whole set? I'll sell it to you for like 50 bucks. I was like, sure, why not? I went through that one. I checked everything. Great shape, like brand new turbo. He was going to run it on a Honda Civic D16, so he had a D series manifold that he was going to run with this whole set HY, and he's like, I sold the car. I don't care anymore. I don't do car stuff anymore. So I bought it from him, and I slapped it on my car, and that's the turbo that you guys have seen in the most recent videos. So that's the HY. It spools great, sounds great, but like I said in the other videos, it's not going to cut it for the horsepower numbers that I'm looking for, unfortunately, because it looks good, it sits there great. And that's when I decided to go to this GTX 3582R. So that's where we're at with this whole thing. Oh, and the one thing that I left out, the differential. I get a lot of you guys asking me about the differential on this car, and it is a Torsen LSD differential out of a Lexus IS300. I don't know what the gear ratio is. Well, actually I know what the gear ratio is because I changed it. The gear ratio is the factory, and I don't know what the factory GE ratio is, but the factory GE ratio is what's in there. So the Torsen LSD, which is pretty freaking cool, you can just unbolt the ring gear, which is the main gear that's on the LSD itself, and you can fit another Toyota ring gear on there. What happened in my case was I thought the LSD, the way it was, with the IS300 ring gear, was going to mesh up to the ring gear, or the pinion gear, that's in the diff for the GE. So the gear that runs from the drive shaft into the diff, whatever the housing. I thought that was the right gear ratio for the factory IS300 gears. Yeah. So you guys can see where I'm going with this. So I put it all in, and it seemed fine. I turned the wheels by hand, and everything seemed okay. I didn't hear any weird clunking, and it spun. There was no slop either, so I was like, great. There was no slop at all, meaning that it was too tight, okay? Again, you guys know where I'm going with this. I put it all back together, fill it up with oil, and I drive the car. It's a little whiny, it's making some noise, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what an LSD sounds like. That's probably how they sound. I know they're a little loud, but it's probably fine. So idiot me. Again, guys, like I'm sharing this with you because it's things that I've done. Don't make the same mistakes I've done. That's why I'm sharing this stuff with you. If you guys want, it's a lot of work. I could probably do an LSD video for you. It's in the car, so I've got to like pull it all out just to show you guys how to do it. I do need to reshim it a little bit. It does make a little bit of clunking noises just because I think the wear on it it's just getting old. So maybe eventually I'll jack the car up and I'll take the LSD out again and show you guys what you need to do to put that in. But it is an IS300 LSD Torsen differential. So driving the car, and I go to show off to my wife, of all people, and who could care less about the car in itself. And I put it first, and I just hammer on the car. And all of a sudden, it sounds as if somebody dumped a handful of marbles into the differential, and that was that. There's no driving. There was no. It was bad. Still have the ring gear. I had to keep it because I was like, you idiot. Like, what are you thinking? Do a little bit of research before we put stuff in and just hope it works, because it could have cost me a lot of money. Fortunately, it didn't, but it could have. I thought what happened was the drive shaft broke. That's actually what it sounded like. It was clunking so bad. I thought for sure I had snapped a drive shaft, or some, like the carrier bearing in the drive shaft gave out or something. So the first thing I did when I pulled over is I looked under the car. I was like, I'm going to see drive shaft hanging there. And there wasn't. So I was like, well, I mean, that's good. I didn't really want to replace the drive shaft at the time. So I was like, that's weird. Something's wrong. Like, obviously. And so I'm kind of pushing the car, like rocking it back and forth in the parking lot. And I was like, I don't know. Like, that's weird. My brother-in-law brought this truck and towed me back to my house. I left it, turned off and then tried to drive it or anything. And immediately pulled the differential. I was so annoyed at myself for doing this. Like, I was so ticked off. I was like, you know what? We're doing this right now. Like, I'm not going to just let it sit. Like, I got to see what happened. And it looked like a metal shop in my my oil pan. So there was a bunch of teeth and just metal. It was just carnage. And I thought I just roasted a brand new, well, not brand new, but new to me, LSD differential. That actually scored for $75. So my heart kind of sank. I was like, man, I just scored this differential for $75, and I just destroyed it. I was pretty upset with myself, but luckily it was okay. So like I said, the ring gear was shot. It was bad. It was completely toasted. You guys saw in the picture. And I was like, oh, well, I have a separate gear. I have a spare gear. I have the one from the 7M, the one that came off the factory open diff. I'll just swap those out. That's exactly what I did. I took the 12 bolts, whatever it is, off, and the ring gears just swapped out. They fit perfect, and they were like the same metal. Like, I checked everything, and I was like, huh, so I guess you can just swap them out. That's cool. And swap the ring gear out, put it back in, did the same thing, turned the wheels by hand, but I left the differential like open, so I wanted to make sure, like, I rotated it by hand before I put it back in the car, and spun it, and it didn't have any. It had a little bit of play, like it should, a little bit of back and forth kind of play, but it wasn't super tight. And I figured that's what it was going to be, because that was the factory gearing that came out of the car from the get-go. So I thought, I'm good, I'm golden. And I bet there hasn't been any issues since then. So ran that. Car's been great. LSD is the way to go. the car drives completely different, and you floor it, you mat it, and it just squats. Like you can just feel the tires just gripping, and it's awesome. So huge difference from the open diff to the LS or the LSD. So highly recommend it if you're gonna do it. I'm trying to block the sun so you guys can actually see my face. So that's where we've been driving the car, having a blast with it. Car drives amazing for what it is. Suspension work's all done. I did the Teen, I say Teen, it just sounds better, it just looks better. The Teen Street Advanced coilovers, which are pretty solid. Like a lot of people are like, oh, the Teens suck, those are horrible coilovers. Like I've heard, I gotta go with BCs, you gotta go with whatever. Like, dude, I love the Teen coilovers, they're great. Like they feel great, they're a little hard for sure, and you can adjust that. I had them on the car for a while now, and they've been fine. I've adjusted the dampening a few times and the ride height and that sort of thing, but they run great. And then I did the White Line end links, the sway bar end links, so they're a little bit tighter, a little bit shorter, and that's pretty much it for suspension stuff. And new bushings. I've done the energy bushings. Like it runs smooth, it runs great. I decided that I wanted to change gears with the car, and I was back and forth between drifting it and making it a straight up track car to pushing a ton more power to make it a drag car. And I've been back and forth on many different things, and you know what, I decided drag racing's expensive, drifting's expensive, and track stuff's not too bad. So I'm just gonna build it as a street car. I'm just gonna drive it and have fun with it. If I want to take it to a track day event, I can do that. Like it'll handle it, it'll be fine. Maybe later on down the road, if this channel starts to bring in some revenue or whatever, maybe we'll put some big Nicky Thompsons on it, put a giant freaking turbo on it, pull a 9-second pass. I don't know where we're gonna go with this car. But that's what everyone asks me all the time. What are you gonna do with this car? Like, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. That's the great thing about it. I'm not sure what I want to do. Like, I just want to have fun and drive the thing. I just want to enjoy it. It's been in my family, like I said. You know, my dad's the original owner, and I want to keep the car around. I don't want to potentially do something to total or damage the car. Like, so drifting is probably not the best idea. I decided, you know, let's keep our options open. Let's put a roll cage in it. The interior's somewhat stripped out of it, which I didn't. I'm kind of regretting that I did that. I sold all the interior pieces basically from the back of the seats back to the trunk. So all the plastic trim pieces, the seats, that sort of thing, I sold all that stuff, and now I'm kind of like, I wish I would have kept it and put it back like around the roll cage and made it clean. I may be able to source that stuff. Maybe I'll get like a carpet kit or something and put the carpet back in. I don't love that it's just metal. And I did some sound deadening, and I did like rhino liner stuff for it so you don't slip when you're like getting in the car. But carpet always looks better, and I want to keep the car just looking good. Eventually we'll probably buy maybe a carpet kit from an actual name brand carpet kit online. I probably won't buy like an Amazon one just because I don't know if I can trust it. I want it to fit, I want it to look good, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But that's where we're at, guys. Like it. Oh, and then I did the over fenders, the Shine Auto over fenders, so I could put a bigger tire in there. I'm running a 275. I want to put maybe a 295 or 305 in there eventually. I'm going to be street driving this car. I probably should have a little bit more meat for some traction on a non-prep, just regular road. So a 305 would probably get me what I needed to be, especially if I start pushing more power with this new standalone. If I start hitting the 600 range, then, you know, maybe that's the route that we're going to need to go is a bigger tire. So, but there's the gist of it, guys. That's kind of the history of my car and everything it's been through. It's been in 2 accidents. One of them was my fault, and I wasn't driving the car. I backed my parents' other car into the back of the Supra, and that was the most heartbreaking thing ever. That's when my dad was still driving the car as a regular driver. Didn't see that he was parked behind me at the end of the driveway, and I backed out like a dumb high school kid not paying attention, and I backed into the side of the car. That's kind of the other reason why I went with the over fenders, because it hit the rear quarter, and it didn't it didn't do crazy damage. I mean, it was fine. There just was a little crease in the actual wheel arch itself that was noticeable, and I didn't like that. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to do the over fenders. Let's just cut them out and call it good. So those of you that were like, I can't believe you cut apart a nice, perfect car. It wasn't perfect. The fender, the wheel arch was damaged, so it wasn't as hard to go that route. I was able to just, let's just cut it out and call it good. So, and in my opinion, the over fenders look so good. They look way better than just factory. Some people are like, no, over fenders are dumb, like especially that you did it with the bolts and rivets and blah, blah. I love it. I think it looks so aggressive. It's subtle. Like, you look at it in person, you're like, oh yeah, okay, it's got over fenders, but it's not in your face. Like, it's not crazy. And I think that's why I like it so much. It just looks mean. Like, it's just a bigger platform, a bigger wheelbase, or bigger. It just looks mean. Just the way it sits, it just looks like it's ready to race. It looks awesome. So happy I did it. I don't regret that one bit. And then the second accident that it was in, my mom was driving it, and she rear-ended a lady, and she had Burger King in the car. And when she hit the back of this other car, it launched a soda into the center console. And still to this day, which is like, I know it's really gross, I'm finding like little specks of like soda in stuff. I'm like, oh, that's still there. That's gross. All right, let me clean that off. So I just got into everything. So I'm pulling, stuff apart on the center dash, and I'm like, oh, there's some more Coke remnants, like whatever was in there. And the car was almost totaled at that time because of the way it hit, and my dad bought it back, or actually never bought it back. It was able to be fixed, and it was never a salvaged vehicle, so which is good. The car has like 140,000 original miles on it, which is pretty good for a 35-year-old car. And yeah, but motor's fresh and everything else. So drive shaft, axles, basically body for the most part is 140,000 miles. So it's great, good shape for what it is. But anyways, guys, I know it's probably not the most exciting video for you. If you're like me, you don't absolutely love the talking videos. You're kind of just like, scroll through it. I want to do this because I was going to be sitting here driving for an hour. So I figured, let the cameras roll. Let's chat a little bit and let you guys know where we're at. This guy in front of me almost just died. I'm on this like 2-lane road. I'm now out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a bunch of side-by-side trailers in front of me. This guy was going to pass and almost head on the car. That would have been really bad. But anyways, yeah. So check out the video, guys. If you like it, cool. If you're like, don't do another one of those again, great. Let me know. I won't do another talking video. I'm hoping to get the car out and driving. Like, it hurts my soul to not be able to drive this car, just because we're trying to figure out the tuning stuff. But we'll get there. And then I want to start racing it, and we'll get it out to the racetrack, the local racetrack here, and do some track day events with it and have some fun with it. So, but anyways, guys, if you have tuned in and you've made it this far, I appreciate it. You guys are awesome. You're wonderful. You're beautiful people. Hang in there. More videos to come. That being said, we'll see you guys on the next one.